Welcome to Let's Take a Moment for Children and Youth. This podcast is brought to you by the Wheelock College of Education and Human Development Center for Future Readiness at Boston University. My name is Scott Solberg, and I'm joined today by
Annie Bell
and
Shrey Venkatesan.
All right. The Take a Moment series is designed for looking for new innovations that create opportunities for all children and youth to develop their full potential. Our podcast is designed for those of you who are interested in or currently working in schools, community-based organizations, or are concerned parents and caregivers seeking new ideas and resources. Since this is our first Take a Moment conversation, how about we each take a moment to introduce ourselves and then why we are here? And I think we took a straw vote, and somehow I won. So I'll go ahead and get started. So my name is Scott Solberg, professor here at Boston University. I am really focused on helping to design, implement, and evaluate just different career and positive youth development programs in schools as well as youth-serving organizations. I love working with our educators, both at national levels, international, as well as in our states. And what we've been collecting over the years is a whole bunch of resources, and been looking for a way to kind of share those, because we know that there's a lot of interest right now in how we can redesign our education systems, but we need access to the kind of resources and supports. And so I'm hoping we're going to make this podcast about fun, hear some stories, but also connecting to some of those resources as we go along.
Mm-hmm.
Annie?
Hi, everybody. My name's Annie Bell. I'm a recent graduate from the Educational Design Pathway at BU Wheelock, and part of the reason that I am here on this podcast and part of the reason that I'm working with Scott and Shrey is that I'm very passionate about people being supported in whatever post-secondary pathway they may choose. And I think that a lot of us maybe grew up and didn't realize just how many options you had. And so I think that it's really important to share those.
All right.
And I'm Shrey. I'm also a recent graduate of Boston University, where I studied economics and sociology. So I moved from the southern part of India when I was 17. I grew up there, and the part of the reason why I'm super excited to be on this podcast and work with Scott and Annie is that growing up, I didn't have a lot of resources in schools or counselors or people who were willing to help in choosing our career pathway. I just chose economics because my dad wanted me to, and I didn't know that there were other options until I came to BU and was able to talk to career advisors and people alike about other pathways that I could choose. So I'm excited to promote these resources with you guys.
That's great. That's great. And I think, the international component is important to us, and we'll be making sure this is widely disseminated because, as you indicated, there are whole areas in the world that have a huge growing population of middle-class individuals that aren't getting access to these resources, and we have a huge number of youth that are needing this, that are just not, either they're unemployed or they don't see a future, and we want to really provide easy access resources that can be made over, reused, as well as just we want everyone to be able to make it their own, because we have to make things more culturally responsive as we go forward. So looking forward to that. So our first topic is really hitting on the issue of chronic absenteeism. We titled it Showing Up. And it's a big issue. It really became apparent during COVID. It's always been an issue, but it became super apparent during COVID and post-COVID, and we still haven't fully recovered. And our states are seeing the fact that in schools they're not showing up, and our after-school programs, are they engaged? Even if they are showing up, are they fully participating? There's a lot to this issue. So let me give you kind of an early story in this, and kind of one of the themes that I think we have to be always considering is we have to figure out ways where we can learn as adults and as educators and as parents what's really going on. And I think we have our expectations, right? Kids aren't coming to school because they don't want to, or they're sleeping in, or they're whatever, right? They're just not organized enough. We need to be open to really listening. And I remember when I began doing this work in Milwaukee, we had a situation in our school. I had the privilege of working at South Division High School, and we were dealing with the fact that we had all these kids that were coming late to school. So at the time and we still had chronic absenteeism, but we also had a lot of issues around that first period and how disrupted it was when students weren't showing up on time. And so I was able to work with our assistant principal, Charles Siebert, to look at something kind of crazy was a little crazy. It's called a paradoxical intervention, where we basically brought all the students into the cafeteria and we had them write down why they were late, what happened. And at the same time, we played the most obnoxious music known to humankind. And so the paradox is that they started actually getting there on time. They actually were, the number of students standing outside that building went from like 200 down to 15 within a week, because they didn't want to have to listen to that awful music. But what was amazing was this assistant principal wrote down everyone's statements and then walked into the administration meeting and said, I want you to look at this. And all of a sudden, we're not hearing, I don't want to be at school. What I'm hearing is, I can't get to school because when I have to drop off my brother at the bus stop, I'm not able to make my bus, right? Parents working late and needing to take care of the different pieces. And when you start looking at all the challenges, I'm working until too late, which we know they're not supposed to, but they are working late. So there's all of these things they looked at and they went, oh my God, these aren't kids that don't want to be here.
Right.
We don't have a system in place to support them in managing the lives that they're living and the challenges that they're facing. And so that created a whole new perspective among the administration level, which now we could start looking at some other areas. But most importantly, we could just stop having that look on our face when they walk in the door, right? We can stop that immediate sense of, oh no, you're not, what are you doing wrong as you go through this? And so we're going to be talking about some activities that I think are really important, but we have to do it with that kind of like almost a positive opening, a sense of wonder, what is going on, and I genuinely want to understand, as opposed to any kind of sense of nonverbal judgments and things that can really set our youth off, and our parents too, by the way. The first one we have in here is this whole check and connect, which is one of the most cited and researched evidence-based practices we have, where the school is actually looking at all the data on who's not getting there, and when they're not getting there, they're reaching out to the family, and they're going out to visit the family to basically say, what can we do to work on this together? Well, this is a great activity, and it works when it's done well and with fidelity, and so there's some training involved in it. But the basic core concept, I think, is really important, that we should be able to find a way to work with the family as a group on this as a project and provide a better understanding, right, of what's happening. Yeah. And I don't know, when you were in school, if you saw these kinds of things going on where kids are just stepping out and how the school was kind of addressing it when you were in there.
Yeah, in a lot of cases for me, like just to add the whole component of growing up in India, right? We had very strict schedules. It was like start at 9 a.m. You gotta be in like the campus by 8:45, or else the gates close and you're made to stand outside the school for like 45 minutes, and then you gotta meet with the headmaster, who's like, "Why are you late?" But then, like you said, like parents are working late, they're not able to drop the kids off, or like bus services don't run to those areas of the town and things like that. But there's like, they're not willing to listen to those excuses, or like not excuses, but the truth of like what's happening. Yeah,
and that was exactly, we didn't have the gates closing, but the door was shut, and it was winter, and it was cold outside.
Right.
So it was a very, that kind of place. But but that willingness to listen is really, I think, a critical piece, right? We have to have high standards. I'm not disagreeing with that, and we need that timeliness, but we also have to have some kind of flexibility.
Yeah, it's about, I think, supporting students when, particularly high school students who may have responsibilities outside of just being a student.
Right.
A lot of students become caregivers for younger siblings.
Yeah.
They become the transportation for siblings or neighbors. They take on jobs. Their focus sort of spreads across many more different things. And so, yes, you don't want to sort of promote this like acceptance of tardiness or sort of lacking on responsibilities. You want to balance it with an understanding of the fact that they're human.
Right.
They're balancing adult responsibilities and, like you said, like not greeting them with judgment, greeting them as a human being, still being welcoming, still being accepting of the fact that stuff happens, and they showed up. It may have been late, but they showed up.
Yeah. I think that's a
And then
big thing.
also that sort of conversation with administration or with parents or community members to say, okay, how can we support the students who are wearing so many hats other than just the student hat so that they can meet their responsibilities and show up and sit in class and not fall asleep or not go hungry. I mean, there are so many things that sort of result in this judgment from administration or from teachers.
Yeah.
And tardiness is just one
Well,
aspect of
yeah,
showing
and it's
up.
and it's
you
and it's
know?
frustrating because teachers are trying to get their lesson going, and it's
Right.
really
Right.
disruptive when students aren't there, or they have to restart, or they have, they're not, they know they've got a talented student that's not able, that they can't reach because they're not physically available. So yeah, I can get it. But these are all kind of those critical issues.
The
I think
connect part is so important.
that's where I was going to go to, the
Yeah.
connection. That there's something about connecting with students, and they
Yep.
need that. And we're going to have one of our last resources we're going to share today really goes into that as well. But this first one, it's about making those connections. So, for example, when I was at South Division, I was working with students, and we were trying to design this program for those kinds of connections and building a nice relational base. And one of the things that really got me was a student who said, "Well, why should I learn from you when you know nothing about me?"
Yeah.
I'm just like, you're absolutely right,
That's fair.
And so we actually designed a whole component called Hear My Story. And it was just basically providing space for the students to talk about their story, but in relation to some of the key success components like confidence and stress and things, but learning about them. And what was fun was we had the teachers share their story too.
I think
So the
that's
connection
so-
has to go both ways, right? We
Right.
have to be able to both give something to the students, and I know it's a little bit in terms of vulnerability to share and disclose, but it connects them. I mean, they feel like, oh my gosh, you're willing to share something about yourself, must mean I'm worth something.
Well, it's the same thing with respect. The idea that you give respect to get respect. You know, that's such a big part of classroom culture as well, and those connections. It's sharing a little bit about yourself as a teacher
Right.
is a sign of respect.
Yeah.
You know, respect of your students.
And like it also just breaks down this whole authority figure, you know, like, oh, so they're also human and
Yes.
we have similar experiences and they have been a student before
Right.
and things like that. you
Yeah,
know.
I agree. And I think it's that sense that, am I giving up power by doing that? And the answer is no, you're actually gaining more. As you said, the currency here is that respect and that sense of care
Right.
that
Right.
comes through that caring adult is such a powerful thing that all youth want, right?
Yeah.
So important. And I think when we're going out to the home, we have to also be recognizing a lot of these parents, they've heard it. They know why you're coming. They know where we go again, right? Whew. And when you've got this constant challenge over and over, it's like, oh, not again. So one of the things we have to also be concerned about is just how we're entering with our families and how are we creating that atmosphere that we're here to support. We're not here to judge. And we sometimes, I've found the way I did it when I was working in schools, I always started with something positive. And I know something part of the big training, right? What's a positive thing about the child that we know, that we can talk about and that we value? And I think that can go a long way in the terms of it being a project we're working on. It's not meant to be a punitive, kind of on the attack as much as we can. And if we can do this, this check and connect process, it reduces the absences and course failures tremendously. The data is strong in that way. The quality of that mentor-student relationship is, as we said, that's the power that it brings. Having that mentoring role, getting created is such a powerful thing. So it's one of those big, it's a big piece. It's something that I think we need to be, it's something to be looking at, and we'll have the resource on our, up on our website. But this is something that Dr. Christensen out at the University of Minnesota created years ago, and it's just been amazing how much data has come in, really showcasing its power and effectiveness. So something that if we're a school that needs it, and parents, if you're sitting here saying, we know we need it too, right? We need a school to do something. You've got the evidence you can share with them as well. We've got a little info sheet that kind of summarizes all the data from a number of studies that you can showcase with your schools. And school counselors, same thing. You could certainly take it to administration and say, here's a program I think we should look at. It takes a little bit of training. We got to make sure everyone's on the same page on it. So definitely there's a little investment. But because it's such a major issue nationally that we're all grappling with, we might have to invest a little to get a lot. So that's kind of the piece on that.
Yeah.
So the next one is called Optimizing Your Learning. And so this is an activity that was designed during COVID. My little middle schooler at the time came home to do this activity, or he was at home, of course, so on Zoom did the activity, where he had to identify some stress points identify issues and challenges to his ability to kind of concentrate and stay focused, and then hypothesize a plan for how he would manage that. Then he tested the plan, and then he wrote a little PowerPoint type thing with photos and everything else showing the impact of the plan on his success. It was fantastic. He had a skateboard, he had his dog. Those were his big coping things for stress. It was great. And he tested it out. And I got permission from the teacher to take this nationally. It was something that was out there that they found. And we then used it as part of our state's micro and academic plan process, which you'll learn more about in sessions coming up. But basically, it's a whole scope and sequence of lessons that starts with emotional development, social emotional learning. And we saw optimizing your learning as a really important, almost like, and really a trauma-informed entry as well, to help youth kind of identify what are my pressure points and what are some strategies that I can look at and think about considering, but more importantly, choosing into which strategies I'm going to want to use and try. And the idea is to make a conversation out of this so that it's a classroom-based activity. It can be done one-on-one, but a classroom-based activity. Parents who can do this at home as well, to just kind of think through where are my pressure points? And then what are the actual things I need to do? The lesson has a nice set of links to different things if we need to learn about some of these things so we can follow up on that. Some of it's just like, I got to keep my blood sugar in check. You know, how often we know high school students don't eat breakfast. So if we're not giving them something to eat on the way in, we're really setting ourselves up, right, as educators of what's going to happen in about 2 hours. So the blood sugar piece, the eating, the needing someone to talk with, just having that support system available becomes really important. But these are, I think, really exciting things. And what we're trying to do is help students then start setting what we call SMART goals. And I think it's pretty much everyone's familiar, but basically something that's specific, it's measurable, meaningful, it's something that is achievable, so we're not setting something way out in advance. It's something that we can do in a timely way, so they're realistic, they're timely. So SMART has all these acronyms, but the point of it is we're setting something we can achieve, and we're setting a time of when we're going to achieve it, and it gets us moving. It gets us making positive motion. And so letting the student make that determination of what it is they're needing, right? Realizing I'm not the only one who has these challenges. Another great place for our adults to also build their optimizing plan as well, because we're all learning how to manage through all of these different challenges. But it can also give a point around what those high pressure points might be for that student, and if they're needing additional supports, we can move them into the counseling or other kinds of support systems they might need as well.
Right.
What are your thoughts about that? Thoughts on that kind of a process? Did you ever have anything like that?
I think I did at different points. One thing that I saw, working on some of those lessons, after they'd been first developed, but also thinking back to my own education and other work I've done with students, they love that bit of agency. Like you don't stand at the front of a room and tell them you're going to do this in the next 6 months. They get to sit there and say, this is what I think I need to do to better whatever aspect. And I can decide how and when and how long it takes me. And it also builds their confidence to realize that they can make decisions and they can accomplish things. And sort of just imagine their own future.
Yeah.
And that has so many positive ripple effects across so many parts of their life and lasts for years, So that's one of my favorite things about them.
Wow, you really unpacked our next topic, too. That
So
was
sorry.
fantastic. No, it's perfect timing as well. We'll get there in a second. But
Yeah.
just what you were describing, I think, is really exciting, this idea of having choice. It's also, that means I'm having some sense of power
Right.
over my life, right? And then the idea that if I can successfully manage it, that's confidence boosting. I feel good about that.
And if you go through 18 years of life, not really setting goals for yourself and not really making sort of self-determining goals or your own agency kind of decisions, and then you have to make decisions, that is almost harder to get through than perhaps the initial discomfort of, well, what do I want to accomplish? Or what do I need to improve and how can I do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that brings up a question for me, for the both of you. It's just like, because agency can be scary, right? Especially for first generation students when they haven't like been taught to how to, I guess, lead or make their own decisions and things like that.
Or given permission.
Right, exactly. So how do you think this will, I guess, or how do you plan to reach specific like first generation students on like how to make your own decisions, or how to get that agency, how to get that power for yourself?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I think what you're describing is that activities like this are especially important. If
Right.
we're trying to prepare them for that post-secondary pathway, and by post-secondary, we'll come back to this a lot in the future as well. We don't mean just college. We mean what are my next steps,
Exactly.
right? I can go to work, military, I can go technical school, 2-year, 4-year. And we want them to think about all of it because things get in the way in life.
Yeah.
We get bumps. So we need to have backup plans. But those are all decisions. Those are all
Yeah.
kind of, as you said, being able to set some agency,
Yeah.
right? How do I have agency? How can I be proactive in that? And so I think it really is giving that permission for that to happen. And the one area that I think is really important when we get to our next topic as well is the idea of having a caring, encouraging adult who believes in your ability to make those decisions, right? And has your back if it doesn't work out. I remember as a preschool teacher, started off in preschool, learned everything about psychology in preschool. I'll tell you, you learn a lot. 2-year-olds, they'll teach you everything. But watching this little 4-year-old as they're trying to go across the monkey bars, and their parents right there, and do you need help? No, I just want you right there, right? I just need you right there. I'm going to do it,
Right.
but in case something goes wrong, in case I need the help, I just need to know you're right there. That's awesome,
Yeah.
right? It's that, and in attachment theory, we call it that secure attachment base. You need that all the way through life. And so I think
Right.
the building blocks is as caring, encouraging adults, as educators, as professionals, as employers, when we bring them into to the lives of youth and things like that, our extended family members. It's just that I'm there,
Yeah.
but I'm there on what you're needing, not on what I'm needing you. That's a shift in that agency,
Right.
providing the agency over. Yeah, but I think that's the building blocks you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. But then when they get to college, you're right, then we need to keep going. If they are in college, and first gen is a big challenge because I don't know that I belong here. As a first gen college student myself, it was rather odd. Not knowing how the system works, not knowing where you go to get things done, and
Right.
it always took longer. Oh my goodness, it was
Yeah.
amazing. But
There's
yeah,
such an unspoken sort of aspect
Yeah.
to the college or like whatever post-secondary experience you may
Yeah.
pursue. There's a lot that's not said,
Yeah.
and I think that's one of the things about the adult, whether it's in high school, whether it's a college advisor, the SMART goals are scaffolded. Like there's sort of a template that you can follow, which I think is really nice. It's a building block all on its own. But depending on sort of like in the administrative guide, SMART goals, this optimizing your learning, it has all of those links. So I think if you structure an activity like a SMART goal, whether it's in high school, whether it's college,
Right.
with other resources around it, that's really helpful.
yeah, because you want to be able to. I mean, today, right? We're always looking stuff up.
Right.
So it's just a matter of saying, here's a place you can look.
Yeah.
It's just giving
Right.
that piece. But we're thinking that they need to do that. But Shrey, we talked about first gen, and you just talked about the unspoken part of things, right? There's just so much that aren't stated that you're supposed to just know,
Right.
right? For our faculty who start their first job, I mean, it's crazy. The first year, it's crazy. We're not going to be able to explain everything, and you're just going to hit your head against everything because you just don't know,
Yeah.
and we can't remember all. Oh, didn't you know we're doing today's the day we start doing all the new applications. Yeah, the
Right.
next 3 months of your life are going to be taken away. Oh, we forgot to let you know that. Sorry. I mean, there's just things that happen. But I think as an international student coming to the U.S. for the first time, or any country, but let's just stay here, right, in Boston, got to be the same kind of experience. And without that agency, how do you navigate that?
Right. It was super hard, and it was just like even the small things like outside of school, like it's so different. It's like one of the funniest things I remember is that when I moved here, the first 2 weeks I think, or my second week here, I tried to go into a restaurant, and I didn't know that you had to wait to be seated. So I just walked in, and they were like, "Hey, where are you going? Like, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
And just small things like that nobody tells you, and then it leads to bigger things like
Right.
resources in colleges. Like, how do you reach out? How do you just go to office hours? Like, how do you, like, I didn't know that office hours were a thing until the end of my first year. Like, they didn't explain much to me and things like that. Yeah, it was pretty hard, but I would say, like, I got the hang of it by the end of my third year. It
By
just
the end
took
of
a
the
while.
third year, oh my
Yes,
gosh.
it took a while.
Yeah. We have Wheelock College. We have Tony Jack, who's internationally known for his work on first gen, and he talks about that issue of office hours, right? Because we
Yeah.
don't explain that actually this is part of your privilege as a student.
Right.
Is we're here for you, and that idea that we're available is an odd one, and we have to really, it's not so much force, but we have to structure it in a way
Yes.
that our international students, first gen students, take advantage of it, so they can
Yes.
realize the value of that. It's the best part of the day is when we get to talk about your life. I mean, talking about class and helping you, I mean, that's one thing, but now we get to talk about future and different things you're interested in, and that caring, encouraging opportunity, right, that's where it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And students lose out, obviously, by not understanding it's part of the process. So it's huge. But I want to go back to your restaurant example because that's a really good one, and I've got so much trauma around that. Because in the United States, you're right. It's you don't know.
Yeah.
And so because you're structured in the United States to go to a place where someone's going to seat you, when there isn't a sign, you have an anxiety attack. And this is what I had in New Orleans. I walk in, it's like, what do we do?
Right.
I don't see a place. I'm not sure what's that. And you're just in this emotional breakdown of, do I go in? Do I not? What's it
Right.
about? In one place in San Luis Obispo, it was hilarious because there's a line to order, and there's no one in line next to that to order. So when I went up there, they said, well, what are you doing? Because everyone in San Luis Obispo know you don't order from that space. You order from this space. There's nothing stated. There's nothing there. It's just everyone knows, right?
Yeah.
And that feeling that there's a lot going on here that I'm not aware of. In Boston, it's
Right.
called driving on Storrow Drive. Until you learn the rules, pal, I mean, it's awful for the rest of us, right? Because there's things we don't talk about. There's no guidebook on it. And I think that's so much of what happens in school is how are we helping provide that piece. And we talked about agency. Without providing opportunities for agency, how are students going to learn that they can make these decisions? They can take risks. They can try some things and find that kind of adaptability they need to really be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff. Funny stories.
Yeah.
All right. So should we move on to the next one?
Yes.
Self-determination theory. So Annie, you mentioned
Yes.
this whole idea of, I'm going to use the word autonomy. We're talking about agency,
one.
but it's also about autonomy, about having choice and being able to take ownership of what it is I want to do. And so much of what we do in our activities is providing that opportunity where it's not a guide, it's an opportunity, and that you can choose in and you can change, you can modify as you go along, but helping the individual make those choices.
Right.
And have the range of choices, I think, is just really critical. The data seems to show it. So what self-determination theory is about is it's about how do we go from I'm feeling forced to do something to I'm doing something because it's meaningful and relevant. It's something I want to do. And we call it intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation, but that's old words. We want to use the fun words now. And so DC and Ryan's come up with and just done a beautiful job in putting these things together, because the other thing you talked about, which Annie, you mentioned, is once I am engaged in having choices and I'm doing some challenging activities, I gain confidence. They call it competence, but we call it self-efficacy in our work. This idea that all of a sudden I really can do it. And when I feel like I can do it, there's an emotional feeling that happens there that we've never defined. It's that sense that I'm able to do something. I'm able to overcome a challenge. I'm able to manage through something. And it's a great feeling.
It's like capability. If it was a feeling, it's a little bit of pride. It's a little bit of excitement. It's a little bit of joy. It's a little bit of, I don't know, but it's like a feeling that you can feel
Yeah.
physically. And it inspires you, I think.
It is. And so what's amazing is when we talk about students that are chronically absent or just not sure they want to be in school, right? So much of it is I'm not feeling capable in this space. I'm not feeling cared about in this space,
Yeah.
right? I don't see the point, right? Oh, you're supposed to go to school, good things will happen. Really? Because I'm looking at my parents just got let go. I'm looking at my cousins just got sent back to their, country of origin. They're seeing things. They know what's happening.
Right.
So to say, oh, this is going to be good for you, really? Really?
Well, and then also, maybe you're late for the second time in a month or a week or ever, and you walk in and you're met with a face of judgment and a tone. And you walk into your classroom and you're met with other students, your peers looking up at you and rolling their eyes because you're late and you're disrupting them. And your teacher throws papers on your desk and says, catch up, or, and so why would you want to go if you're going to be late?
That's right. That's
Why
right.
would you want to apply yourself if you're going to sit in a room where it doesn't feel like you're wanted or supported or encouraged, It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, and I think that relatedness, which is there, so there are three themes: autonomy, competence, and the last one, relatedness. That feeling cared for and connected. It's not just the educators.
Right.
It's also the peers. And in our research, when we found that students felt connection, they perceived availability of support. Doesn't mean that they received it or anything. It just means I care, I feel cared about. They were more likely to come to school. They found it relevant. They found it meaningful. So that relatedness piece that you're describing, that sense of a space where I can feel like I belong, where I can feel a lack of judgment, and that people are ready to work with me, so critical. But we also need to get that into the peers. We need our peers to be connected. And I think this is where, as we're working together on some activities, we're trying to find a way to help the peers connect with each other, educators to connect with the peers. All of that stuff creates a positive energy, I think, in the school that we really want to create, as we go forward. It's interesting. So one of the takeaways is really, they're not showing up to do the schoolwork, which is what we want them to be. They're showing up because of the people.
Right.
And they're showing up because they're engaging in things and engaging with people, and it's meaningful to them in those ways. And I think that's what we have to really, consider at the end of the day as we're going forward. So we have one of the things about self-determination theory that I found interesting too, in all of these different pieces, was a student who I was talking with one of an assistant principal this time at a different high school, and a student comes in, he was just really upset, and he goes, so how many times do I have to get suspended before you finally kick me out? And where do you start with that, right? I mean, where do you start with that? And we had another program that I had started over at the South Division High School, where those students that had been either pushed out or stepped out, we could start putting them on a GED type track, and they could start studying even while they were in high school, the latter part of high school, or they could make up credits doing that as well. So we had a credit recovery going, or the GED. We had it in Spanish, we had it in English, we had the community college, had a faculty there in case they were over 18, and we had our high school faculty there in case they were under 18. So we had this community designed to say, it's time to get restarted, right? Students loved it. So I'm just looking at this kid going, right, I mean, if you're not, why are you here then? He goes, well, I didn't choose to be here. This is where they sent me. Back to autonomy, back to that whole sense of, making choices. But also, there's a lot of smart kids where that classroom it's not going to make it. But they're smart. So what do we focus on? That you're not sitting in the desk, or that we need to support you in getting to a finish line? And how do we start kind of re-examining some of these structures to help them get connected if they are that smart? And this kid, obviously very quite smart, we could tell. How do we get them on a track to be able to demonstrate that intelligence? Maybe there's some work that they can do. We've got all kinds of work and learn programs for high school students, so they can start making some money while also finishing up. But also just getting into a track where, at least in the United States, we know we can get you an alternative pathway, and let's get you on that. So you're feeling good that I can do this, but I'm not also having to sit in this kind of system where I'm just not feeling like I'm thriving. Sounds like a simple answer, but I think there's a lot of kids where those kinds of opportunities could really be beneficial. And just kind of being open to that, I guess, is really the big issue.
Yeah.
Instead of a one size fits all.
Well, and I think that openness, it's openness at the teacher level, it's openness at the administrator level, the district level. It's also openness in the ways that we talk to a room full of students and even arrange a classroom. or a community space, like an extracurricular room or something. That was one of the biggest things that we talked about in so many educational design classes, is the desks in rows facing the board where the teacher stands and tells you, and you sit there and you look at them and you absorb. It's a designed way of sort of taking away that autonomy, and so if you're forcing a student to sit in a desk to do work, that right there can be the whole issue. Maybe let them sit on the ground, but there has to be an openness to adjust whatever sort of parameters are in place. Not even parameters, just design, change the desks, whatever.
Yeah, and it can be hard, when teachers are being pressured that they have to teach, to a test, or they have to teach a certain structure and get to a certain piece. It changes the dynamic. It doesn't give that flexibility. But yet you're right about, it's almost, we can talk about project-based learning, but we're big fans of civic engagement, where we've got passionate youth that are not wanting to fit in a desk, but they want to solve problems. So how do we help them design a problem they want to solve? And in doing so, learning the skills that it takes, that are the academic skills at the same time, as well as the social and interpersonal skills, which we know are more important when it comes to their future. So I think the giving that opportunity, we had a young man in our high school back at South Division who was basically couch surfing, which is code for homeless, and just kind of going from friend to friend to get a space. And we were running, at the time I was leading an after-school program in addition to the in-school program. And during the after-school program, we had a cafe that the kids created. That was a civic engagement project. They wanted a world's cafe where all these students from all these different cultures could come together and have a place that was safe before and after school. A lot of gangs around the school. So sometimes that first hour after was an important time before and after was important to be somewhere safe. And so we had a space where we were kind of engaged in this work. And this young man decided he wanted to host a Thanksgiving dinner for the community. He raised the money, he got the turkeys, he got the stuff, we got the school cooks helping, we had all the stuff worked out, and we held a Thanksgiving dinner.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is incredible. There's talent there. There's passion there.
Yep.
One of the smartest kids I've ever met in my life, but not going to be sitting in a desk. It's just incredible. So it's sort of finding those opportunities, and it is hard when I have to be so focused on just the academic part. It doesn't give us that ability to make those really capture the essence of what talent's in the room. So those are some things. Yeah.
I would also say, because I feel like I just want to clarify, when we talk about, or when I was talking about sort of redoing the way that you arrange a room, that is not just on the teacher, that's not just another thing to put on an already busy, stressed, overwhelmed teacher who also has their own life. Some of these adjustments that we may advocate within the classroom, it is also so important that there's a wider school community that supports them. That Check and Connect is not just on the teacher,
Right.
or that encouraging students to pursue cooking a Thanksgiving meal out of their school is not just on maybe the teacher or just on one caring, encouraging adult to partner with them.
It's a lot of pressure.
Right. It's so much pressure. And so I think that's one of the things that we can't forget.
It has
Not
to be
that
a
we
community.
have,
Yeah, it
but
has to be a community.
it
level.
really has to be a community thing, and that's the only way that these adjustments and this progress on, the part of any school community will be sustainable.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing if one teacher runs the before school and after school cafe and is like the adult that's in the room supporting the students with that. What happens if they leave?
Yeah.
Or they get burnt out? That resource for students can disappear in a day.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's part of it too, is that adjustments made just in a classroom or in one sort of school subject there really has to be broader support for it.
Totally.
Yeah.
And
So
I
that
think
it doesn't
I want to
disappear.
just quick transition then that this is why we want our community organizations involved.
Yeah.
And we
Oh,
want
they
them
can make
listening to
such a
this
difference.
podcast. Everything we're talking about, they can be a huge, so we'll give a shout out to Sociedad Latina here in Boston, but that's the kind of stuff they're doing, right? And how do we help support them, and how do we help schools connect more strongly with these resources, because they're connecting with youth in a different way. And so they can
Right.
provide some of these kinds of supports, as we
Yeah.
go forward. We just have to design the policies to allow that access point to make those things happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts?
I was just thinking about like how important these community-based organizations are, especially identity-based community organizations. Like you talked about Sociedad Latina, and then there's like other nonprofits in Boston that go a long way, like not only in high school settings, but even when like students move on like from high school to different parts of their lives. It's such a turning point because it helps build your social network and things like that that are very important to career development. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think that we have organizations that work, that have the skills. In our particular place at South Division Milwaukee, we had gang experts. They knew the kids, they knew what was going on, and they could talk, and they could help us manage situations in ways because of the skill sets they had and the relationships they had, right?
Right.
It was huge. And I won't go into today, but we had some tough times that they really helped solve. And if it weren't for them, things
Yeah.
could have gotten really, really bad. But we also have parents, you talked about immigrant populations coming in, right? There are organizations that are great at specializing in those kinds of supports.
Yeah.
Right.
And so the idea of taking first-gen college students and taking, our students of color that are low-income families that have never made it through, and providing them with those extra supports all the way through and into the post-secondary, it's awesome. How do we make those connections real and really starting early in school and throughout, and really investing in them as a part of our resource?
Yeah.
Right.
That network, social network you talked about, and the whole idea of just having that capital, that social capital, is what we're helping them build before they enter their adulthood, right, into that
Right.
emerging adult period. And it's just such an important piece. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
agree.
is.
Well, we have one more resource, and this is called a low lift, high impact one. Doesn't that sound fancy? It does, meaning it's free. And the other ones we've talked about, except for the Check and Connect, there's some training involved, but everything else is a free access, and we try to lean in as much as we can. But this is let's go back to being a preschool teacher. So the one thing you learn as a preschool teacher is you better be knowing where all your students are at all times,
Yeah.
right? You're monitoring, you're counting. Where are they at? What's happening? You go on a little trip, counting, who's the front, who's the back. Same kind of thing, I think, when we talk about chronic absenteeism. Are we accounting for where our students are? Who's missing? This particular activity goes one step farther because it's like, who's not connected? Right? It's called a virtual relationship mapping strategy and lesson plans. Boy, that's fancy. It's out of Harvard's Making Caring Common initiative. And basically, they have a little spreadsheet where you would want our school counselors and social workers to sit down with all the educators at a faculty meeting and say, write down who you're connected with and tell them what, give us some information about which students are you worried about? What's going on that might be happening there? So you're doing basically a quick check as a mapping, a whole network map of your school to know who's connected and who's not, so we know who we need to get connected with and find an adult mentor, or we start our peer mentoring program, whatever it takes, we know those we need to get to right away. Now, to start at the beginning of the school seems like it would be difficult, but you've got, at least in high school, you've got three grades that are coming back, and in middle school probably two, at least one or two that are coming back. So you can get started right away, and then as you get to know that new class, you're having an October, November meeting to update and make sure we're connected, because that's once we lose them in that first quarter, that sets their path for the rest of school, right? Even for the next few years. So we want to definitely have a sense of who they are, what we're getting, and a lot of times we can even start the mapping with the middle school to find out who we might need to be looking for. And I know a lot of good schools do that. They really reach out and see what's going on. But I love this mapping idea to be able to make sure that everyone has a caring adult, and making that part of the mission of the school, that this is what we're here for, to make sure everyone's connected in some way. That sets a bar in a whole new direction.
Well, I mean, any school with the value of, being welcoming or being inclusive or you know, just being a community could benefit from that tool. You know, that tool supports any number of school values. You can, I mean, so many, I should say so many. Where I grew up, so many fall sports start in the summer between middle school and high school. So like football has practices, even track will sometimes have practices. And so maybe before freshmen step foot in the building for the first day of school, they're engaging with older students, they're engaging with coaches, you know, so you could start to build a little bit of that network, that mapping for freshmen who, like from day one, you know, if you have a younger sibling of a student that you already had, that's a great way to build a relationship. Yeah, I think it's one of those tools that can make such a difference.
Yeah, so we'll have this up on our YouTube channel. We'll have the links there. So I think, you know, you're going to be able to go to that YouTube channel for all of the resources we ever talk about, and also we have a resource portal there that you can look up some other activities as well. It's the Center for Future Readiness. We are going to kind of close, I think, for today, and we want to thank you for taking a moment for children and youth and listening to the Showing Up title. You know, how we getting everyone to show up. We're not just talking our students now. We're talking our educators. We're talking about our support systems. We're talking about our families. How are we all showing up for youth to make this happen? And there's just a few ways that we've talked about that I think could be really helpful. At Wheelock College of Education and Human Development, we're looking for undergraduate and graduate students who want to transform the lives of children and youth throughout the world. We work locally, but we work globally as well. As co-director of our Center for Future Readiness, we're especially interested in those of you ready to become the next generation of school counselors and career development professionals. So with that, I want to say goodbye from me, Scott Solberg.
Goodbye from me, Annie Bell.
And goodbye from me, Shraven Gateson.
All right.